All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Friday edition of the uh, NBA Q&A. Chuck and Nick here to bring you the news on this beautiful 9-game slate. Much better than a 14-game slate. Much better than a 2-game slate. Nick, any early thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. I like these Friday play-in slates. It's like the perfect number of games. I think it's 9 tonight, but like it's that sweet spot. 14's way too many. 2 is way too few. You end up playing guys at the end of the bench you don't want to play. And then we were just talking before we went live. When you have those huge slates, you can get almost everything right. And there's still guys that you're not going to have in your player pool. So I love these. I love these 9-game slates. I think we're right in the mid-range. Nothing seems too chalky. Should be a good one tonight for sure.
Yeah, we were talking before the show a little bit. Like, I have never seen weirder winning lineups at the top than I did on that previous 14-game slate. Just like all the chalk failed, so I
Yeah.
guess, but just like 8 guys at 3% ownership with half of them under 1% is just it's not something you're probably ever going to see again, or maybe
Yeah.
we will. I don't know. This NBA season's been kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean it's early. We got to keep that in mind. It's so easy to be like super results oriented. I know we were talking about this in Discord the other night too, but again, it's refining the process. More nights than not, the chalk's going to be hitting in most spots, so we got to continue to pick and choose our spots. But I mean, yeah, we don't want to try to emulate those lineups with all 1% guys. That's not a likely outcome,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I don't think there's too much to like. Don't go and change your whole process because all the chalk failed and all that. You know, if you look at the lineups of the top players and how they did, almost every single top player that I follow had a poor night the other day, and
Yep,
so it's going to happen. But it's a long term game. We're playing for a long season, so just keep doing the correct things in your process. Don't overthink too much from one slate.
absolutely.
So we do have a few pieces of injury news. We know that De'Aaron Fox is out. Devin Booker's been ruled out. Cam Thomas turned his ankle. He's going to be out for a couple weeks.
Hmm.
Terry Rozier is still out. Jaden Ivey's out. And Xavier Tillman's out for Memphis, which is going to affect Jaren Jackson Jr. a little bit. He's one of my top plays tonight. And then we have a few questionables and probable guys. Underdog hit us with a bunch of news for tomorrow, which we don't care about yet.
Yeah, exactly.
uh,
But yeah, I
so
mean the big ones right now, as far as questionable goes, I think Alperen Sengun in Houston. That's one we're definitely keeping an eye on. I think he was at shoot around. Don't know if he participated, but if he's out, that could mean we get Jock Landale as value into the starting lineup. It's also possible with Sengun out that they move Jabari Smith to center, so we got to keep an eye on that one. AD's in. We were waiting on that piece. But yeah, I mean, we have the Dallas front court. Seems like there's a few guys questionable there. I don't know that I want to go there anyway. Um, but yeah, we always get a few surprises to drop before things lock. And with 9 games, I wouldn't be shocked to hear a star or two ruled out that we're not really expecting.
Yeah, it seems like we've been getting dumb news every day, and even getting guys ruled out after the game starts. Jalen
Oh my
Smith
god.
yesterday,
Uh,
40% owned, and just 10 minutes after the game starts, yeah, he's not playing. Like, all right, NBA, that's the fourth time it's happened this season. It's not common, so
yeah.
they, I don't know if these guys get hurt in warm ups, sure, but it's not great.
No.
Uh, so for probables, we do have Bradley Beal and Gordon Hayward probable. So I'm assuming they're in. I'm not really playing Bradley Beal, but Gordon Hayward's still in a good spot. Same
Mhm.
matchup that we saw him play last time against Washington, and that's one of the top games that we're targeting. I think that's my number one game.
Oh yeah.
And Herb Jones was also questionable, so that could affect the rotation in New Orleans a little bit. There's a couple guys we might be interested in over there. But I think we already have a question chat. Jose Morales, how you doing? Thanks for being here every day. Is Memphis the game to target? I think so. I think that Utah, Memphis, Charlotte, Washington, and New Orleans, Houston are my top 3 games to target, and then Sacramento, OKC is kind of interesting, and Brooklyn, Boston. I'm interested in the players, but I think this is the widest spread on the board at it was 11 or 12 points last I saw, so it's going to be a
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah. I know a few of those watching know I'm a Nets fan. I will say they're undefeated against the spread this season, so take that for what it's worth. But with Cam Thomas out, no Ben Simmons, no Nick Claxton in Boston against a healthy Celtics team. They don't have Al Horford tonight, but I don't think that's going to matter too much. Yeah, really tough spot. like there to be more value coming out of Brooklyn. I think if we see Lonnie Walker start, he's going to be scoring dependent, but he's one guy I definitely have an eye on. They're getting Cam Johnson back tonight, so they lose one Cam and they get another Cam back, which is pretty interesting. Different positions, but they do play similar minutes, so I don't know that that's going to change too much there. But yeah, I mean, the total's nice, but again, if there's one game on the slate, we don't want to get into the business of projecting blowouts, but if there was one, I mean, that's probably the one where we do have to be at least a little bit concerned.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, like there's a few players I'm interested. I think Mikal Bridges has been getting kind of overlooked. I'm wondering how much Cam Thomas's usage rate has been cutting into Mikal Bridges. I mean, last season we saw him put up just a ton of shots every game, and he hasn't quite had the opportunity with Cam Thomas taking 30 a game.
Right.
But they still have Spencer Dinwiddie. I believe Ben Simmons was ruled out tonight already too.
Yeah, he's out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Spencer Dinwiddie's going to pick up the slack. We saw Dorian Finney-Smith, I believe, really have a really good game on the last. Let's just look at Brooklyn real quick.
Yeah.
Dorian Finney-Smith and then Royce O'Neal. With them not really having a center, we'll have to see if Day'Ron Sharpe is in the starting lineup. We haven't projected for 17 minutes. He's pulling some decent ownership over on DraftKings. Do you think that's correct?
I mean, I think he's probably going to come off the bench, play maybe more minutes than we're projecting him for. I have him around 22, I think, but like, I don't know. I think he's okay. I think that's more just a product of the slate. We don't have any real cheap value tonight. Sharp's a guy who's a good fantasy point per minute producer. I think even in a blowout, we can see him on the floor. So there's reasons to like him. But coming off the bench, I mean, the Celtics aren't that big without Al Horford in the lineup. I don't know that they're going to be rushing to get Luke Cornett extended minutes or anything. And even if they do, I don't know that they need to get big defensively. So I think they're fine. I mean, Finney-Smith, they're kind of playing positionless basketball, which is why I think they're having so much success. Like, everyone on the floor can hit threes almost at every single moment. So Finney-Smith's been good, but I don't like how much the prices have climbed on both him and O'Neal. I'd probably get to O'Neal first, but I think they're okay plays. I just think there's probably decent options that are similarly priced in other games that you mentioned earlier, probably more competitive environments, faster pace, etc.
I like it. I am interested in Royce O'Neal again. I had him as one of my, not one of my top plays, but he was in that second tier of plays on the previous slate, that huge slate. And just they don't have a center unless they're running Day'Ron Sharpe 30 plus minutes, which we know they're not going to. And I think Royce O'Neal, I mean, he's picking up the stocks. He has a good, decent rebounding floor. And then if he's hitting some shots, then he could end up there at 3% on DraftKings, 9% on FanDuel. But Mikal Bridges, I think, is the main person I'm interested in this game. Spencer Dinwiddie a little bit, but they raised his price. We see the model doesn't really love anyone in terms of OF index, but Royce O'Neal, Lonnie Walker, even Dorian Finney-Smith are showing up decent on the DK value. And then we mentioned Day'Ron Sharpe on a day that we really don't have that much value. So these are guys that I'm going to be getting to a little bit.
Yeah, I think if this game stays close, Bridges probably hits value 9 times out of 10 in that scenario. And we talk about Lonnie Walker. He's super scoring dependent. He's been shooting ridiculously well for the Nets, mostly coming off the bench, though. So I'm really interested to see what the starting lineup looks like here. I think you could go to Lonnie regardless if his ownership stays down. But again, very scoring dependent, so the floor is low. You need his shot to be falling. You mentioned Royce O'Neal. I like him as well. Another guy, though, whose upside definitely gets boosted when his shot's falling. So I don't know. There's good pieces here. I just don't know that we're having like big mispricing. I don't know, because they're getting Cam Johnson back tonight. So yes, they're losing Cam Thomas. But I do think Johnson's going to get some usage.
And just another guy I feel like we have to hit on because he's pulling 17% ownership on DraftKings at 3,600. Trendon Watford. We're seeing him get some minutes. Is that a spot that we're interested in tonight?
I mean, if we don't get better value, I don't mind him as like a last guy in. I'm not expecting a ton out of him. He probably plays 22 to 26 minutes on the high end. But again, it's a guy who's maybe blowout proof. Like, regardless of whether this game's close or not, he should be in the rotation. And then if things get out of hand, I could see them leaving him on the floor late. So I don't mind Watford here. I think he's fine. He is a good fantasy point per minute producer. And again, we're really scraping for value on this slate, especially sub 4K on DK. Very tough to find. So I think he's fine. Wouldn't want to use up the center spot for him, but he does have power forward eligibility, which is certainly key to getting to him for me.
Okay, I like it. And so enough with Brooklyn. Let's go ahead and get into the guard. Just we have the resident Nets fan, so I thought we'd go a little bit deeper in there.
I appreciate it. Love it.
Jose Morales asking about Keon Ellis from Sacramento. So this guy was a late add to the starting lineup, but because of when that game started, it's like you basically couldn't get him into your lineup unless maybe you had Julian Strother in the utility or something, and you
Yeah.
swap that out. And so if Keon Ellis is starting again, he's one of our top value plays on DraftKings. They raised his price to 3,900. He was a flat min last time. We have projected for 22 minutes. I just want to see how many minutes he actually ended up playing. But I
I
mean,
think it
it's a
was
starting
21.
point guard for cheap. You know, let's take a look here.
I think it was 21. But
Yeah, he played 21 minutes, 0 assists for a starting point guard, 4 rebounds. The 3 steals kind of helped him, but he didn't have a great fantasy game. But I'm looking more at the 21 minutes at 3,900 than I am at the 1 for 3 shooting with 0 assists.
yeah,
Uh, we've seen Davion Mitchell starting. He hasn't, like, I think he's a good defensive basketball player, but he doesn't appear to be the playmaker that the Kings need right now, even though they have
mhm.
Domantas Sabonis on the court most of the time. So Keon Ellis, 3,900. Like I said, he's near the top of the guard value on DraftKings. He's actually the number one value on DraftKings, according to the model coming in for sub 10% ownership,
Nice.
flat minimum price on FanDuel. So he's a guy I'm interested in. He's not going to be a major part of my builds, but I imagine he's going to find his way in there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I want to see him starting. I'd be a little bit concerned about his minutes if he's coming off the bench. He didn't close. I think that's notable. But yeah, as long as he's in the starting lineup, I think sub 4K, he's definitely in play.
And I did mention this is a game that I like. Sacramento plays at a high pace. OKC. I mean, I don't know if they play at a high pace, but they're at least in the upper half of the league. The total is 232 in that game.
Mhm.
And so we'll have to see. And just one note since we're on OKC, I don't believe Josh Giddey closed the game last game. They went with the rookie Case and Wallace or C.
Wow.
Wallace, whatever his name is, which is very weird. And the coach said that if they are up and they need the defense, that's something that they're probably going to do going forward. And so Josh Giddey, he has not been great. And with the chance that he doesn't close, I think that just puts me completely off of him. But I'm always going to be interested in SGA until they raise his price to 11K. I mean, he's third in the model in terms of guards, right after Luka and LaMelo. Makes
Mhm.
sense. Uh, so
Yeah, yeah. No, I definitely like SGA tonight, and I mean you're getting him sub 5%. I think on both sides. Luca's not drawing much ownership, but Lamelo's very, very popular. So if you're looking for a pivot in tournaments, I definitely could see getting to SGA, especially on DK where their prices are closer. FanDuel, I think there's a wider discrepancy, so it's tough to get away from 9,100 Lamelo tonight on FanDuel. Like that's a core play for me over there. But yeah, I really do like SGA and his upside for sure.
yeah, and LaMelo at 10K on DraftKings, he's only pulling 15% ownership. They raised his price, but I think this is more appropriate than the 9,100 on FanDuel. At least on DraftKings, we have to make some decisions.
Mhm.
Given the salary and the ownership, I'm a little more interested in SGA at 2%, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to play more SGA than I am LaMelo. It just means I'm going to be more over the 2% on SGA than I am on the 15% LaMelo. But both of them are going to be a big part of what I'm doing. And then in the second tier, Desmond Bain. This is, I think, one of the best games to target tonight. Memphis, Utah, and they just Memphis is so bad. They need someone to score the basketball. He's going to take shots. He's putting up some good peripheral stats too, and so the 19% and 20% ownership, that makes sense to me. How interested are we in Memphis today?
Yeah, I mean, I am definitely interested in Bane. Again, jumping positions here, but Biombo at center, I think, is one of the better kind of floor value plays. I think he's pretty chalky. I'm going to keep an eye on his ownership, but he's definitely someone I'm going to be getting to. Jaren Jackson Jr. feels a little bit too cheap on both sides, drawing a lot of
Mhm.
ownership as well. Yeah, Memphis is thin right now. Not only are they missing Morant, obviously, but Xavier Tillman, Steven Adams is out for the season. I think Brandon Clark's still out. Zaire Williams might be questionable. I think I saw that earlier.
Mhm.
Not a player usually jumping off the page, but if he's out, that does create more minutes for guys like maybe Asante Aldama. But yeah, I mean, the big ones here are obviously Bane, Jackson. Love both of them. And then Biombo at center, I don't mind at all on both sides. I just think he's reasonably priced. Good fantasy point per minute producer. And Utah, I mean, they're not huge, but I think they have enough length that you are going to want a true center on the floor a good chunk of that game. So I'll be on Biombo.
Yeah, Biombo was a guy I was interested on, that huge 14 gamer coming in at like 1% ownership, but there are just too many other starting centers similarly priced, maybe a little bit higher price, that I didn't really get to Biombo. But yeah, I think
Mhm.
it's a good spot tonight. The 21% and 18% ownership seems insane, but it might be
Yeah.
correct. Like you said, they have to play someone. Utah has Actually, I think Walker Kessler's out, but they have a
Kessler's out, but yeah, Olynyk and Collins are pretty big, and then I'm trying to think of the other guy, but
and Laurie Markkinen's a spot that I'm pretty interested in today. As long like they haven't raised his price that much, and I'm targeting Memphis, so it makes sense that we want to target someone on the other side. And Laurie Markkinen is right at the top for Utah. I mean, Jordan Clarkson went off last game. This dude just
mhm.
took over. And so his price, it might seem a little uncomfortable, 6,400, but it's probably appropriate. Coming in at 10% and 8% ownership, it's a spot I don't mind getting to. And John Collins is a guy we've been talking a lot on these streams. And
Yeah.
I think that his floor is pretty safe, but he hasn't really shown us that ceiling that we're looking for yet. But I still think he's a fine play at 3% on DraftKings, 14% on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it is notable Collins to get into some foul trouble that last game. So he didn't have a great game with Kessler out, but I think that is a bit of an outlier. Still got the 27 minutes, still almost hit value. So totally agree with his floor, but they did play Laurie Markkinen at center a little bit. I think that's notable. Definitely helps his upside a bit. But really, I mean, if they're going to start Keontae George and Agbaji, like Clarkson, Markkinen, Collins are going to really soak up all that usage. So I really like pretty much everything for Utah right now. Even Olynyk off the bench, if everyone's afraid to go back to him because of that dud. I mean, he's still an okay value play, priced about the same as Biyombo, so I'll keep an eye on his ownership as well. If he were to start, I do think he'd be really chalky, especially on FanDuel where he's power forward eligible. But yeah, Utah, one of the spots we're definitely going to get to some solid mid-range plays and also some decent value plays tonight.
And we have a Ken in the chat seems bad to play guys like Derek White and Biyombo now that they're chalk after a good performance. So with Biyombo, the main thing is that we got confirmation that Memphis is willing to run him the appropriate minutes at his price. So let me just confirm.
Yeah.
It's 4,900 on DraftKings. I mean, he played 30 minutes, and so he only put up 23 fantasy points. So it's not like people are chasing his performance, but the 30 minutes is a really good sign for him. Hopefully today, if we're playing him, he can get that double and a couple more stocks to help his upside, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of Kelly Olynyk, I mean, he's coming in at 1%. He's a little more expensive than Biyombo, but that's a pretty decent pivot. He has the
Yeah.
potential to close games, which is what we're looking for. And on the opposite side of this game, I think it's a good spot. And then on FanDuel, at 4,400, it makes sense that he's 30% today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say this is a little bit out there, but if for late swap, like if you're playing cash games or you're playing single entry and you feel like you're falling behind and you have a chalky Biyombo in your lineup, a way to get different and try to make up some of that gap is to pivot in the same game to a guy like Olynyk who's going to be much lower owned. So if things are all going well, continue to hold your chalk with someone like Biyombo, but those are the situations where even without injuries, there is some merit to late swapping, especially on some of these bigger slates. So yeah, I'll be on Biyombo and a little bit of Olynyk as well, but definitely a situation to kind of monitor. I'm going to answer the second part of that question. Like Derek White tonight, no Al Horford is going to secure minutes for him, so I do think he's probably a decent chalk play. I do agree that when someone's super popular after a big game, you want to get away from them, but if their price doesn't move and we're not getting better value, I don't know. You almost have to kind of look at it in a vacuum and just say, hey, Derek White's still underpriced. He's still going to get extended run here. Maybe this is a piece of chalk I eat and get different with the rest of my lineup. Like, you're going to have to pick and choose your spots. I don't think it's just, a guy went off, now he's popular, now I can't play him. I think you have to say, what are the odds he does it again? And is he still too cheap?
Yeah. Well said. I mean, he played 38 minutes and he put up 38 fantasy points, but I'm more focused on the 38 minutes and 18 field goal attempts. That's huge for a guy like Derek White. And so even though he's chalk, like for example, 2 games ago, Benedict Mathurin went off, and on the short slate last night, Benedict Mathurin, like his price was probably a little bit too cheap, but he was super chalk. And I thought it was a poor play because I don't want to chase guys after they just have one good game, especially guys that got benched in every game except for now 3 games this season in Benedict Mathurin. And so it's different. I don't even think it's quite chasing, but it's different to chase Derek White than it is to chase guys like Benedict Mathurin, especially when they have a pretty good matchup against Brooklyn. So,
yep, agreed.
And thoughts on Nurkic tonight on DraftKings versus the Lakers? So we're kind of jumping around position, guys. Sorry about that, but there's just these are spots that I think that we want to focus on a little bit more. And Nurkic, he's not showing up great in the OF index. His DK value is okay. His FanDuel value is okay at 6,900, 7,300. I mean, he's 4% and 1% owned. And so if this is your GPP shot, then I think it's probably okay. It's not a spot that I'm really going to focus on getting to tonight. But if I end up with a couple shares of Nurkic in my exposures, I'm making 60 lineups on DraftKings tonight. And so if I get, one or two or three lineups with Nurkic, I'm not going to go and like change it or anything. I don't mind it, but it's not a spot that I'm targeting.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I think he's priced where he should be. I will say it's encouraging that he finally played more than 30 minutes. He played 38 minutes against Chicago. Lakers obviously a big team. They're going to need him. But at the same time, it's not the most favorable matchup. So I do like Nurk. I think he's fine, but certainly not a priority play. But again, if your lineup is pretty chalky, you're playing guys like Derek White, maybe a guy like Nurkic is a good way to get different.
And keep in mind, Anthony Davis is expected to play tonight. And to me, he's at worst the second best defensive player in the NBA after Gobert this year. I don't think that affects me wanting to play centers against the Lakers because this team, I'm wearing my Lakers shirt. I'm a Lakers fan, but this team is tragic right now. And so I have no problem playing guys against this team.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I mean, we got to talk a little bit about this. Like, people really look at individual matchups in NBA, and more every year, like, it's becoming positionless. Like, you want guys that can do almost everything on the floor. Like, a lot of these guys are hybrid players. Like, AD is going to not always be under the rim protecting the rim. Like, this is not the way the NBA is played anymore. It's not just like point guards go against point guards, centers go against centers. So you kind of have to look at the team defense, and the Lakers' team defense has not been great. So, again, obviously, you don't want him in AD's face all night, but the way the NBA is nowadays, that's really not the type of matchups we're grading or looking at.
Especially a player like Nurkic. I mean, the way he gets his stats, 8 assists, he's putting up a lot of assists, and the 17 rebounds, maybe he's not going to get 17 against AD. Maybe he will. But if he's getting the assists, he's getting a couple blocks and steals and then putting up just, 10 to 20 points. I mean, it's not like AD is going to stop him from doing those things. So, and then do we play Kuzma tonight? So let's look at Washington, one of our other top spots tonight. And OF index, Kuzma looks awesome. Jordan Poole, it's scary, but he looks awesome too. And this ownership discrepancy is a little bit crazy to me, but we have seen Kuzma is still the man over in Washington. It's his team. Jordan Poole has been awful, unfortunately. Still a pretty good GPP spot, though. 6,700 on FanDuel at 4%. I'm willing to take some shots there. 7,200 on DK. It's a little bit harder to get to, but at 1%, this is a guy who we think is capable of scoring 40 real life points. We saw him do it in preseason. And so if that's your GPP shot tonight, Jordan Poole, I don't hate it. Kuzma, though, at 25 and 34% ownership, I think that ownership is probably appropriate.
Yeah, I was just going to say. Yeah, if I play a lot of single entry, Kuzma's a piece of chalk I'm pretty comfortable with. Also because I'm probably going to be eating LaMelo chalk on FanDuel. I really like Gordon Hayward as well. I just really like this game. And if there is a piece to trust from the Wizards, it is probably Kuzma. But I do agree. I think the upside for Poole, we haven't seen it at all. His price continues to plummet. 6,700 on FanDuel feels way too cheap. There were times last year with Golden State when Curry was out where he was pushing 9K. Obviously, he's not producing at that level right now. But it is notable that he's way lower priced than he's ever been before. And it is a new situation, but he should really be seeing more usage here in Washington than he was with Golden State, even running that second unit. So I do like Jordan Poole here. I think it's a matter of time before we see some ceiling games out of him. And what better spot than against one of the worst defenses in the league in the Charlotte Hornets. So I do like Poole here. Really solid run back if you are loading up on some of the chalkier Hornets.
And then, Kuzma's taking 20 plus shots a game. We saw him go 13 for 24 in the last game against the same team. The 9 rebounds is encouraging. He didn't get a block or steal, but we don't really expect that from him anyway. 51 DraftKings points. A couple of the top players that I follow that I've been mentioning, we had a 14-game slate, and one of them had 50% Kyle Kuzma last time out. His price is, I think it was 7,800 last time. He's 8K today. I think this is a spot we can go to pretty comfortably.
Yeah, like I said, he's a core play for me on FanDuel. I think on DK, he's only 200 more. Great play, great matchup, massive usage, and he gets rebounds as well, which helps boost that floor. So all around, really do like Kyle Kuzma a lot here.
It was interesting because Gafford was pretty chalky on the last slate at 4,900, I believe, and they bumped his price to 53, and now he's pulling no ownership on a smaller slate. And so this is a spot I'm willing to get back to a little bit. I know he had a bad game against this exact matchup, but because he's under 10% owned, I don't mind getting there. Denny Avdia at this ownership 15 and 20% was extremely surprising to me today because this is a GPP play I love getting to every day. I think his price is a little bit higher than makes him like a smash GPP play, but this ownership is, I don't quite understand this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure out. I'm going to pull a popcorn machine. We could keep talking through other things, but I remember I had a lot of Mark Williams in that game too, and he was kind of struggling. I almost feel like both teams were like, "Hey, let's just agree to go small." Like it's really strange to me that Gafford didn't even get to 20 minutes. I'm wondering. I mean, I'm assuming he was in foul trouble, but if both teams have their centers in foul trouble and then they just continue to play small, like that is notable. This is the exact same matchup, so I don't know. I think I like both centers here, like on paper, but I am at least a little bit intrigued in that game flow, trying to figure out what happened where both teams did seem to go pretty small. Because I don't think Williams had a great game there either.
Yeah, Gafford stays in foul trouble, 4 fouls in 13 minutes, and they just said,
Yeah,
"All
man.
right, dude, just have a seat next to me for the rest of the night," you know. But
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Mark Williams on the other side because similar to the Biombo thing, not that these guys are pulling the ownership that Biombo is, but Mark Williams, I mean, he played 18 minutes. He put up 24 DraftKings points, had 14 and 7. He had 4 fouls in the 18 minutes too. So because we just saw this matchup go kind of small, it is a fear that we could see it again. But Mark Williams I can't imagine he's pulling any ownership today. Yeah, 2 and 3%. I think it's worth a shot.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the popcorn machine right now. This game was a blowout, so both centers lost their fourth quarter stint. So usually you're at least getting 6, 7 more minutes for both of these guys. So yeah, they got in foul trouble, weren't shooting well, but I do think it was more a product of the foul trouble and the blowout than both teams being like, okay, let's just play small ball tonight. So probably dug a little bit too deep into that one, but I'm pretty glad that we took the time to correct it. I think both centers definitely in play here.
And we see PJ Washington pulling this kind of insane ownership on FanDuel, 35% at 6,200. I think PJ Washington's a great play tonight. Do I think he's a 35% on FanDuel great play? No.
No.
13% on DraftKings is more appropriate, but his 6,700 price. It's just slightly more than I'd like to pay. A kind of a similar situation. I think that his floor is pretty good, but I have questions about his ceiling. And now we don't have to hit a ceiling outcome with every player in our lineup. So if PJ Washington, gives us, I hate to throw these out there, but like 34 fantasy points, like we're feeling pretty comfortable with him in our lineups on both sites. Are you
Yeah.
getting to PJ Washington in your runs?
Yeah, again, I'm more of like a single entry guy, so I am getting a decent amount of him for the floor. But I agree, like we haven't seen the huge ceiling games out of him. Lamelo and Rozier, or not Rozier, excuse me, Hayward really dominating the usage. We're also seeing Miller take up some usage in that second unit that was going to like Oubre last year, but I don't know. I'm just a little bit surprised we haven't seen more ceiling games out of Washington, and it seems like he's just not as aggressive offensively. But I do think he's reasonably priced. I do love the matchup. I do think he's capable of a ceiling. It's just tough to click that and feel great about it when we haven't seen it for the past couple of weeks, even with guys like Rozier out of the lineup.
And then, yeah, speaking of Gordon Hayward, they raised his price a little bit, 7,100, but his usage has been so high. He's clearly the second guy after LaMelo on this team. Great matchup. He had a poor first half last game, but he kind of turned it on in the second half, lost a few minutes to blow out. I don't mind getting there, even at these 15%, 22% ownership. And the last guy I want to mention is Teo Maledon, 3,600. He's projected for 15% ownership on DraftKings. It seems like we don't have much value tonight. I mean, he only played 18 minutes. Maybe he would have played 20 if it wasn't for the blowout.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not the worst fantasy points per minute guy. He's not the best either. But on a night where we don't really have value, if you're trying to get to the studs, Teo Maledon is not a bad option.
Yeah, I don't mind him if he stays low owned. I think that's the type of player, kind of similar to a Keon Ellis. If they're going to get popular, then I'd kind of shy away. But on a slate lacking value, I don't mind Maladon. Again, not the most advanced offensive producer, for lack of better words, but he's coming in with the second unit. He's not on the floor that much with LaMelo or Hayward, which is a plus. I mean, I do like Brandon Miller. I want to just bring up quickly. Wide range of outcomes with him, low floor, but also a high ceiling. With Rozier out, he should continue to see a little bit of an uptick in usage. But yeah, the way they're staggering rotations right now, I think I like Maladon running that second unit. Doesn't have to share too much with LaMelo or Hayward, which is certainly a plus for his upside as a value play.
And Courtney A. Parker, I saw your question earlier. I was just thinking about how to answer it. Basically, just follow ownership and see if the model agrees. Kind of. It's not
Depends
as
on what you're
simple as that.
playing. Yeah, if you're
Yeah.
building one lineup, that's not a bad way to go. You don't want to have all chalk, but usually in NBA, the most projectable sport, the chalk is chalk for a reason. Usually someone's out or something's mispriced. There's usually logic to why players are popular. So if you want to start your builds that way, good, but you don't want to just play this top 10 popular plays unless you're playing like a cash game. And even then, that's not always the best idea. You need to get different with a couple spots, especially on a 9-game slate.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways you could look at it. I have it sorted by DraftKings ownership right now. We can see that no one is super chalky today, but like Jaren Jackson looks like an awesome play in the model at top ownership, so I think he's probably good chalk.
Mhm.
Whereas we see Mike Conley, while his DK value score isn't bad, his OF index is very low, and I know he's a lot cheaper than these other guys, but maybe that's a spot that we're not as excited to get to.
Mhm.
These other guys, Kuzma, Gobert, even Derek White, like these guys all look great in the index, Desmond Bain, Sengun. So these are guys I'm comfortable getting to, and then sort by value and just see who's pulling ownership. Zaire Williams is third in the model. If he plays, he's coming in at 1% ownership, but that doesn't mean like, oh, we have to smash in Zaire Williams. I mean, he's projected for 1% ownership. He's not a great play, but the model does think that he might be getting overlooked. Same with Mark Williams, who we mentioned, and Keon Ellis at 5%. If he's a starting point guard again, I think he had a really bad game. And we don't need much from
Mhm.
him to pay off this tag if it allows us to fit in the other guys who are going to carry our lineups to the top.
Yeah, totally agree.
So let's just make sure we didn't miss any other guards. I think we hit on the guys. I mean, Tyrese Maxey's been awesome. His OF index is okay. He's only pulling 7% ownership at 8,100. I'm kind of surprised they haven't raised his price yet, but that's a spot I do not mind getting to on DraftKings. Paul George. So the Clippers guys are going to be tough for me to get to. We don't know what's going to happen, but Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are the two guys that I would still be getting to.
Mhm.
Kyrie Irving going against Clippers is fine. So I don't buy too much into like narrative stuff, but Luka Doncic kind of owns the Los Angeles Clippers as a
Yeah, he
franchise,
does.
and
Yeah.
so if we're playing Luka, I don't. I think it makes sense to play someone from the other side, and Paul George and Kawhi are probably the top two options. Russell Westbrook doesn't look bad. Anthony Edwards has been awesome, and this game, Minnesota San Antonio, I'm really surprised it's only a 7-point spread. I would like if I didn't see that, I would think that Minnesota was just going to blow them out. Had the best defense in the NBA. They've been awesome, and San Antonio is not good.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I have a Spurs jersey on right now, just by coincidence, rocking the Dennis Rodman. But yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued by that game. I love Anthony Edwards just because no one ever seems to get to him. He's like 1K more than the guys like Bane. Like, there's a lot of good plays in that 8K range. We talked about Kuzma, etc. So I don't think people are paying for Edwards as much as they should be. And I mean, he's in peak form now. It took a game or two for him to kind of find his legs, but he's been ridiculous these past two games. I really like him a lot as a tournament play. Again, I agree with you. I think there is some blowout risk here, but I think it's travel related. Maybe they have a game tomorrow. I know they're on the road into San Antonio. But yeah, the 7-point spread's a little bit surprising to me as well. I mean, the Spurs, young team, not the most talented, but I do think they're pretty deep. They actually have a pretty solid bench. And on the defensive end, they haven't been as bad as I think they would be. So I don't know. I don't mind this game, but I'm with you. I do think Conley's probably a little bit overowned. A really good floor play, but kind of limited ceiling. I think in like cash games, you're definitely going to get to Mike Conley. But yeah, Gobert's price on DK too, 6,800. Not a guy I'm ever excited to play. Like I don't love the player. I don't think anyone does. But when he's sub 7K, I think you do have to at least take notice.
And on Anthony Edwards, this is like guys like him, SGA. I don't care what they're showing up at in here. I don't care what their
Right.
ownership. Like when they're showing up at low ownership, I'm going to be over the field on these guys every single slate. I don't care what the matchup is. It's just their ceilings. They have the ceiling against anybody. And
Mhm.
this is crazy. 3 and 5%.
Yeah, come on.
9K is an appropriate price, if not a little bit too cheap for Anthony Edwards. So another spot that I really like getting to. And just a couple other guys I want to mention. I'm interested in Cade Cunningham. I'm interested in Fred Van Vliet. I'm a little interested in Jordan Clarkson. We talked about him a little bit. Let me just see if there's any. Is there
Uh,
anybody else on here?
Yeah, I really like Jalen Green for the
Mm,
Rockets.
yeah.
He's been outstanding, shooting the ball a ton, making all his shots look a lot better this year already than he did last year. It is a good matchup with New Orleans. Pretty good, pacey, high total game there. Marcus Smart, I think, is not an exciting play by any stretch, but I do think he makes some sense with Morant and these other guys out from Memphis. But then one kind of boom bust scoring dependent guy, Kevin Herter, hasn't been hitting his shots, but he is taking them. So if they do start to fall, I think at his price, he's going to look decent. Again, with the Aaron Fox out. And I don't want to bring him up, but 4,700 for Jordan Hawkins on FanDuel does feel a little bit too cheap coming off a game where he burnt pretty much everyone. I think we're projecting him for pretty high ownership, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that kind of fall off, especially if we get a little bit more value to open up. If he's going to be 30% owned on FanDuel, I don't think you need to get to him. But yeah, I was expecting the field to really shy away. The DK price, he's almost unplayable, but a guy we've seen has a pretty decent ceiling for that price point. But yeah, I'm surprised the field's still on him. I guess they're getting a little sharper as far as recency bias goes.
Yeah, and speaking of like chasing guys who put up big games like Matherin and Derek White, so 3% ownership, 5,600 is probably a little bit too expensive for Jordan Hawkins, but this is a spot I don't mind getting to. If he gets hot, he can really put up a score, and if no one else is going to play him after he burned everyone, I don't mind it. The FanDuel price is probably a little bit too cheap, so that's why people are getting to him there. But at 3%, I'm willing to take a couple shots on guys like this. And let me just make sure we didn't miss any other value. I think Nick hit on these guys. So let's move on to forwards very quickly. We're running a little bit behind, but we got into the games that I think that are the most important to talk about. And we did just get some news. Devin Vassell is starting for the Spurs today, so hopefully that helps the Spurs stay in the game. Zaire Williams was ruled out, and John Conchar is available to play. So let's actually just take a look at Memphis real quick and see if this Zaire Williams news affects much. The model is going to take a minute to update.
I think Aldama is the one who we see benefit. He got those minutes last game, I think, when Zaire went out.
I was looking at Aldama earlier, and I just wish his price tag was a little bit cheaper. But if he was a little bit cheaper, everyone would be playing him. But 4,800, I mean, he played 26 minutes in the last game. Maybe he has the potential for a couple more minutes. This is a guy we typically want to play more when Jaren Jackson Jr. is out, but they have a need to play Jaren Jackson Jr. at center. So maybe Santi plays a few more minutes. Luke Kennard started off super hot last game. I think he finished with an okay.
That's a good call. I like that call. Yeah. Scoring dependent, obviously, but I think 4,100 on both sides. I was looking at him earlier, and I was like, yeah, if we don't get more value, then this is a guy I'll beat on. And sure enough, we haven't gotten much more value. So, yeah, Luke Kennard makes a lot of sense to me.
I mean, he's been playing 27 to 32 minutes. It's a guy I mentioned a while ago. His first 3 games, he shot, 2 for 17 from 3. And in the last 2 games, he's 7 for 12, which is one of the best in the NBA. So Luke Kennard, value guy that I don't mind getting to over there. John Conchar, probably not a guy we're interested in even at his, I mean, he's 3,700. If he was like 3,200, maybe I'd try and get there a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think we need that.
It might be unnecessary today, but I mean, if he has the potential to play 20 plus minutes, then if he shows up in a couple lineups, I'm not going to fight it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so top forwards, we already talked about a couple of them. I think we both like Lauri Markkanen, Jason Tatum, KD, LeBron, all look fine. Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, I think was confirmed in today.
He's in, yep.
Okay, so Brandon Ingram's price, 8,700 and 8,300. He's been pretty disappointing at 2 and 5%. I don't think we need to get there. I'm not sure I even like him as like a GPP shot.
I mean, I've been chasing it, and it's because McCollum's out, and we saw last year, even with Zion in, whenever CJ's out, usually Ingram was hitting like 50 fantasy points consistently. He's been bad, but I don't know. Part of me can't quit him, and this is not me recommending him, but I'm sure I'm going to land on some Ingram tonight. Again, it's just a product of Zion, or not Zion, CJ McCollum being out of the lineup. And I think Herb Jones was still questionable. I don't know if you saw that, if he's in or not. Still no Najee Marshall for them. So if Herb Jones is out, I'd probably get to even more Ingram. But yeah, the field is pretty sour on him, so maybe it is a decent time to not buy low on the price, but buy low on the ownership.
Jaren Jackson, another guy I'm very interested in. He's chalk on both sides. He's going to be a big part of my lineups today. They're going against Utah. He has a need to stay on the court. Now, historically, he's been a foul-happy guy. He's been better about it lately. We don't worry about foul trouble here. If he gets in foul trouble, that sucks. But if he doesn't get in foul trouble, then he's probably going to play close to, I don't know, we haven't projected for 35 minutes with the potential for a couple more minutes, I think, against this big Utah team. We mentioned Anthony Edwards, good play. Jaylen Brown might be getting overlooked, 3%, 7%. His price came up a little bit. FanDuel, the 7,600 sounds pretty good, though, with small forward eligibility. Kyle Kuzma is one of my favorite forward plays overall. And then Asar Thompson, his price is coming up, but his floor seems so good. I mean, the blocks and rebounds, and it seems awesome, right?
Yeah, and they're missing a ton of guys there. I mean, Ivy, Burks, a bunch of rotational players. Thompson, awesome rookies doing it all. I'm really surprised by how well he's been rebounding at the NBA level, but it's been consistent. So we get a nice floor out of him. Obviously, a tough matchup with Philly, but I mean, I don't know. Why not let Osser run in his rookie season, even if you're way behind? Like, I don't think they're rushing to pull him out of blowouts like some of these other teams we're seeing. They're trying to get these young guys reps, and yeah, I like Osser sub 7K on both sides. Totally reasonable in my opinion.
Yeah, he's playing 37 to 38 minutes. Like
Yeah,
this guy has not had less than 7 rebounds in a single game this season, and
that's
like
wild.
one block seems lower than what I expect. I mean, we've seen as high as 8, and he's had at least one stock in every game. So I think he's a pretty good floor guy with also the potential to hit that ceiling. FanDuel, he's probably a little bit stronger of a play because blocks and steals are worth 3 over there.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's a tough matchup, and if they're in this game, he's going to be on the court.
Yep.
And then let's take a look at value real quick. We got a question about Houston. Let me pull up these Houston guys. Jayshawn Tate, Tari Eason. So Tari Eason was mid-price last game, and I wanted to play him so bad, but like 14, 15 minutes, it's tough. He smashed that minimum price. He's up to 3,800 and 4,100. It's a spot I
Yeah.
don't mind getting to. We can't. I don't think we should expect more than the 18 minutes we haven't projected for, but he's a pretty productive player. And Sengun, I just got an update that he's still a game time decision. So if
Jeez.
Sengun's out, maybe that helps Tari Eason a little bit.
Yeah,
If
it would.
Sengun's
It would.
in, I still don't mind getting there. And then Jayshawn Tate, slightly higher DK value, slightly higher FanDuel value, both terrible OF index guys, but we don't have much very cheap value. So 3,600 and 4K, 11%, 3% ownership. I'm fine getting there a little bit.
Yeah, obviously we're gonna feel better about it if Sengun's out. I'm with you on Tate. I do like Tate here. I will just say this about Eason. I don't know how many minutes he played last game, but that was his first game of the season, I believe, returning from injury. So they could be kind of slow to ramp him up. I know he put up a nice score, but yeah, only played 14 minutes, Tari Eason. So maybe just proceed with caution on him. I don't know that they're just going to take the training wheels off right away. Again, working back from an injury. I feel better about Tate's minutes, probably the first guy off the bench. Hasn't been as productive point per minute as Eason, but again, if you're going to have a 15, 16-minute cap, it's tough to feel excited about anyway.
The thing with Eason is his usage is just so damn high. And if he
I
actually
know. I
plays
like
the
the
18 minutes,
player. Yeah, it's just I think they're treating him with kid gloves coming off the injury, and like I don't have any firm like word of this, but again, 14 minutes last game. That's his first game of the season. Even if they ramp him up to maybe 18 or 20 tonight, that's still a limit. So it's at least notable. I love the player. I wish he was on the floor for 30 minutes. I'd be loading up on him. But yeah, I just don't know. I just want to proceed with caution just because I do think there is an actual minutes limit on him right now.
and he put up 10 shots. He grabbed 9 boards against the worst team in the NBA, the Lakers. And
It's
so,
crazy. The
you
numbers he
know,
put up in 14 minutes are wild. But yeah.
and the Pelicans are short tonight, but if he ends up in a few of my lineups, him and Tate, I don't hate it. They're not going to be a main piece in what I'm doing for value though. Like value's tough, and so it's going to be tough to get to the pay ups. A lot of good mid range plays that we've mentioned, but like a guy that I'm so interested in, Grant Williams, 4,700 on DraftKings, 53 on FanDuel. Like I've been playing this dude every slate, and he's been doing pretty well most games against the Clippers. I mean, the minutes are there. Even Derek Jones Jr., 4K. Like I'd rather pay the 700 more and get to Grant Williams, but Derek Jones Jr. seems like an okay play too. He's pulling a little bit of ownership.
Yeah, I think the field, and myself included, is kind of slow to adjust to what Williams' role is with these Mavericks, especially when they're thin in the front court. We saw him with Boston the past few seasons, playing with Brown and Tatum, two of the higher usage guys in the entire league. Luka obviously fits that, but he's a very different player. Luka taking the ball up the floor, passing to Williams in the corner a lot. If you need a ceiling game out of Williams, he's going to have to hit his threes. But I do think he does enough of the other things to probably have a decent floor as well. So I like Williams. It's taking my mind a little bit of time to adjust to this new team and new role with him. But I think I need to do it sooner rather than later because he's definitely playing a bigger role than he was with Boston.
I mean, we like 30 minutes. We like how well he's been shooting from 3. I mean, 4 for 8, 7 for 9, 3 for 7, 4 for 5. He did go 2 for 5 in both of the last games, but he's taking 5 threes in every game. He should get a couple more rebounds. Like I say that, but I would think he'd get a couple more rebounds. It's tough with Luka just grabbing them all up. But yeah,
And I don't want to play devil's advocate really here with Williams, but I will say the bigger games where he was hitting those 30-point, almost 40-point ceilings did come with Kyrie out. So I think we're seeing a little bit less usage. Like he was taking 7 to 9 threes in those games without Kyrie. But again, you're getting 30 minutes, you're getting 5 3-point attempts, still a decent play. But I would just temper expectations a little bit. To get that ceiling game, you're going to need to go like 5 for 5 or 5 for 7 from 3 or something like that.
So Gordon Hayward just got ruled in. He's available to play, so I think we
Good.
can play him without
Love
any
him.
hesitation. Yeah, it's just if these guys are good to go, they're good to go. And so just because he was questionable earlier doesn't affect anything for me.
No.
And then centers, we already talked about a few we liked. Mark Williams is showing up top of DK value, and I love it because now I'm probably going to play a bunch of Mark Williams today. Bismack
Yep.
Miyambo is second, even though he's a little bit chalky. Don't mind it either. Rudy Gobert was like 2% owned on the last slate when he was $200 cheaper. He went off one time, and it's a great matchup for him against San Antonio. We love it here, but he's pulling a ton of ownership.
That's wild. Yeah,
Uh,
25. Yeah, I mean the thing you got to remember, you're getting two centers on DK, so all the ownership numbers on the centers should look a little bit inflated compared to what you're looking at on FanDuel, where you just have the one position. But yeah, I think in cash games, like you're probably playing Biombo with Rudy and using one as the utility. In tournaments, I love the Mark Williams call. I think he's awesome here. We love every part of that game. Why not love the one piece that's low owned, and that's Mark Williams? So I can definitely see getting to him. Sengun, if he's in, I think he's great. I'm thinking the Q tag's going to keep his ownership down. I wouldn't mind if that news came out after lock that he's in which case it would be really wise to get to some Sengun. So I'm with you on them. And then, yeah, I mean, MB is almost impossible to fit tonight at his price, but this is the type of matchup we've seen massive, massive ceilings out of him. So if you can get to some Embiid, more power to you, but we're really lacking value on the slate. So I'll probably be living more in that mid range.
And Jalen Duren is still showing up really high in the value. I'm excited about. I thought the 14%. I thought it'd be a little bit lower, but 6,500 on DraftKings. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna get there. Like he has to guard Embiid, so hopefully he doesn't get into foul trouble. Hopefully that means he has to stay on the court.
Right.
It's it's a tough matchup, but I think the ownership is appropriate. His price on DraftKings is appropriate, and I'm gonna get there. Dan Gafford, 5% ownership. I'm gonna get right back. I love Sengun. He's probably my favorite center play overall tonight. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. has power forward eligibility on both sides. I think we really want to focus on playing him in the power forward spot. He's very chalky, but it's such a good matchup for him. He's probably one of the best plays on the entire slate.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Really like Jackson. Again, whenever you can play multiple centers, you want to do it. So use those guys with power forward eligibility in your power forward or forward spots where you can, because again, centers just a higher floor, better fantasy point per minute players, generally speaking. John Collins has power forward center eligibility. I think he's interesting. We talked about the Jazz for a while earlier, so I won't go too deep into that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of Gafford for me tonight, a lot of Williams. Talked about Biombo in my lower risk stuff, but yeah, the center's pretty solid tonight, all throughout. I think top to bottom, you could find what you're looking for in any price range.
And we just got news that Derek Lively is available to play for the Mavericks, so we're probably not really interested in anything going on with the big men there.
No.
And before we get out here, I just want to mention Anthony Davis. If he's good to go, he's good to go. And his price in DraftKings is still inappropriate. FanDuel, it's kind of expensive, but on DraftKings,
Yeah.
9,800 at 3%, I'm going to be well over the field on Anthony Davis. If he's hurt, like if he's not 100%, I don't even think he has to be 100% to beat the price tag. And
I
it's tough
agree.
to fit him because we don't have the value, but AD at 3% is incorrect. And last guy I want to mention, I do like a Vika Zubac as well. 5,700 on DraftKings. I think that's a pretty decent GPP shot. And there was one more guy, Karl Anthony Towns. He's been bad on one of the best teams in the NBA, but around 8K on both sides, projected for pretty low ownership. I think he's a good GPP shot as well.
Yeah, definitely, and especially if everyone's going to go Bear. That's double leverage if you get Cat going off and go Bear not really hitting value.
And one last question in the chat from Courtney A. Parker. Kata Bates Jop FanDuel value. So I think he closed for the Suns last game, which is huge, coming in at 1%. The model doesn't love him as value. Model thinks he's okay value, 44 and 4,300. I don't mind it. If there's another spot, I would probably try and find another spot. But if that's where you end up as the last guy in, then it's probably okay.
Yeah, as the last guy in, I think he's okay. He is in the closing lineup, like you mentioned. Not historically a big time offensive producer or anything like that, but again, last guy in, I think you're going to get him low owned. He's fine, and you got something to cheer for in that late night window.
And these kind of guys tend to do really well against the Lakers. We're sloppy with the ball, lots of rebounds up for grabs, and so it's not a terrible matchup. And we just got news that Herb Jones was ruled out, and so it's a plus to Hawkins, it's a slight plus to Williamson, slight plus to Ingram. Maybe Jonas Valanciunas actually has to stay on the court, assuming Sengun is in. He's pretty good GPP play at 2% also. And
Yep.
Dyson Daniels started
That's a
last
really good
game.
shout. Yep,
I've been waiting for this guy to start. 1% ownership, 5,100 is uncomfortable, but he didn't quite get there last game. He had a lot of steals, which helped his which helped prop up his fantasy score. But I think he shot like 3 for 10, which is unusual. Yeah, 3 for 10, but he played 31 minutes at 5K. It's a guy that I want to take some shots on tonight too.
Totally agree. Really like him at that price too, and he's a logical pivot off Hawkins on FanDuel. Hawkins is going to be very popular now. I will have some Hawkins, but at the same time, I think in lineups I don't. Daniels is a really good leverage point.
All right, guys. Well, Nick, any final words before we get out of here?
No, fun slate tonight. Definitely keep an eye on the news, especially the Alperen Sengun thing. I think he plays, but if he doesn't and you get Jock Landale starting, you're going to want to be able to jam in some Jock Landale. He'll very quickly become the best value play on the slate if he is starting for Sengun. So just keep an eye on that.
And just a quick look at just nothing really changed in the OF index. Still the same top guys we're talking about. DK values. We talked about most of these guys. Drew Holiday's pretty interesting with the high OF index value as well. And then the top FanDuel values. Yeah, Keon Ellis, flat minimum price, 3,500. Pretty decent play. Zaire Williams is out, so we'll need that to update. But appreciate you guys watching. And head to the Discord live. I believe we have Eric in there, probably starting right about now. So thanks.